So last year I had the privilege of getting introduced to the philosophies of Bob Chapman. For those of you who don't know who Bob Chapman is, he is the CEO of Barry-Wehmiller, which is a small manufacturing company, multi-billion-dollar manufacturing company that's based here in Clayton, Missouri. And Bob at one time was ranked as high as the #3 CEO in the world by Inc. magazine. So he's got a lot of bona fides for being a very good CEO on the worldwide stage. So Bob's philosophy about managing people is much more about managing people as if they're in your family. So Bob is very good about telling a story where he was at one of his very good friends' weddings. And what he did is, as his friend was giving away his daughter, he essentially looked at his new son-in-law and said, "I am entrusting my baby to you." And he had this kind of moment when he was watching this and said, you know, the people out there, everybody is somebody's baby, and they're entrusting them to your care. And he thought at that moment, you know, the people that are in my company are somebody's baby, and they've entrusted me in their care, and I'm going to treat them like family. And that's exactly what he does through Barry-Wehmiller. Now, they're a manufacturing company, but their purpose is to improve the lives of all the people within their business. And it's not just something that they put up on the wall next to the elevator. It's something that they live by. So to demonstrate that, when they went through the Great Recession, you know, they had a lot of good things going. They were having some record years. They had a lot of pre-orders coming through, and so they thought they would weather the storm a little bit better than most. What happened, though, is that even though these large pieces of manufacturing equipment had huge deposits, you know, all over the world, these companies putting deposits down on these manufacturing equipment, even though they had that going for them, people started canceling those orders. And so the bells started going off, some of the flags started happening to where they were a little worried, and they thought, we're going to have to make some real adjustments. Now, Bob at the time said, I'm going to treat this entire company as if it's my family, and I'm not going to fire people, because how can you fire people that are in your family, right? And so he went and got creative with his staff and said, how are we going to weather this storm? What he did is he reduced his salary down to like $3 a year. It was something incredible as showing leadership. And then he asked all of his folks to figure out how they were all going to maintain their staff. And what they did was they all weathered it together. There were folks that said there was a mandatory vacation time. And so several people took a month off. They actually enjoyed themselves and had time to spend with their families and go on vacations that they hadn't done in the past. In the instance that there were folks that just couldn't afford to take the time off, there were ones that could, and they would trade their time. And so others would keep working and others would take more time off. And over that entire period, they did not lay anybody off in an effort to save money. And by doing that, I think they created an amount of camaraderie among their corporation that in the long term turned them into an incredibly successful company. And so after weathering the storm, the amount of dedication that their staff has to the company is just unheard of. And it demonstrates a lot of the philosophies that Bob has. Now, what else Bob has done is they've built a teaching tool, a university within their company called Barry-Wehmiller University. And what that does is it helps teach all of their members, anybody who wants to be a part of it, all of their staff to become better leaders, to become better employees, just to become better people. And one of the directives that he gave to his head of curriculum was to say, okay, I want you to get me the greatest course on leadership that you could possibly design. And so he said, okay, I'll take that. And he went away. He comes back and he says, here's your course on listening. And he said, no, I don't think you were listening. I asked for the greatest course on leadership. And he said, here's your course on listening. And so that's what he took. They decided that leadership really depends on how well you listen. And so they created the Listen Like a Leader type of format, and it was wildly successful to the point that people's lives were being affected. People were taking this listening workshop and it was affecting how well they had their relationships with their wives, with their kids, and it was absolutely life-changing. Now, for a long time, it was inside the Barry-Wehmiller universe, but Bob decided to take his philosophies out to share with the rest of us. And so him and his wife, through their foundation, started a nonprofit, and they fund a workshop called Our Community Listens. And I had the benefit of going through this workshop last year, and it is absolutely incredible, and it can be life-changing. Now, how many of you have ever taken the DISC assessment? So everybody. That's great. What's good about the DISC assessment, and if you saw the quote that I had up there first, says, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. I think it's important to get as much knowledge as you can about yourself, because truly we can only affect ourselves when we're having relationships and when we're demonstrating leadership and when we're working. And so part of the workshop is to first do a DISC assessment and get a good idea of where you stand within that realm. I pulled this out of the workshop, and it's a great image of where people land within the DISC assessment and just some of the characteristics of the different breakdowns. Now, if anybody isn't familiar with the DISC assessment, it's a way of self-analyzing where you fall in 4 different categories, and you get a strength in each one of those categories. It's interesting to me because I've taken it multiple times over the years, and in the context of my old job as a banker, I was a very high D, but when I transitioned to Medici and was doing more with relationships, I actually transferred to a high I. And I was still a good mix of both of them, but I thought that was very interesting to see. What this image showcases is kind of where you might fall in the different characteristics. So in the high D, that's the type of personality that's direct or dominant. It's somebody who really believes we're going to do this now. And what they thrive on, what one of their values is significance. And they're really focused on what we're getting done. If you look at where they break down, they're task-oriented, and they like to tell people what to do. On the I characteristic, you've got somebody who's an influencer. They're interpersonal. They want to do it happily. They want to do everybody to be happy with what you do. Their primary source of value is from freedom and the freedom to do things the way they want to do it. And they work through people and telling people what to do. So it's the who breakdown. On S, those are our accountants typically, the people that work on more task-oriented type of things, service, steady, nonprofits, the types of folks that say, let's do it as we're told, as agreed, as we've figured out, so that we have harmony amongst our group. And it really shows how we're going to do things, the type of people that we ask to do things with other people involved. And then my nemesis, the C, which I am a 0. My wife is also a C. So that's, if you look at the way this is broken down, the people that are across from you are typically your opposite. And they're the most difficult to communicate with, which is why I point out that my wife is a high C. It's somebody that really believes in expertise and excellence. So she's an attorney, she likes documentation, she likes lots and lots and lots of details. I hate details. And so it's somebody that we're going to do it right. I want to know all the details. I'm going to ask lots and lots of questions. Why are we doing this? You got to tell me why we're doing it, right? You can't just do it because you feel good about it. They're task-oriented, and they ask, again, a lot of questions. So that really is getting down to where you fall within this grid, right? On the characteristics that you self-analyze, and you'll get that reading of where you fall. Now, once you've known yourself at a deeper level, it's important to understand where other people fall on that chart. Because when it comes to communications, you have one characteristic profile on one side and another characteristic profile on the other side, and if you're not speaking the right language, it's very difficult to make sure what is said is what is heard, right? And so this communication profile breakdown is some of the characteristics of where each person falls and how you can adapt your behavior and the way that you talk in order to discuss things in the way that they want to hear it or appeal to the things that you want them to do, right? And so the process of the workshop, which it's a 3-day workshop and it's very intensive, there's a lot of back and forth, there's a lot of trialing different concepts. It really breaks down into knowing yourself and then knowing others and then learning how to listen. Now, it's interesting because listening seems pretty intuitive, right? We all think we know how to listen. But the vast majority of people listen in order to respond. Most of the time you're thinking about what you're going to say next. Or in my case, I am a natural problem solver. And so I'm constantly listening to what someone's problem is, and I'm going, oh, I got to fix that. I got to figure out how I can do that. My wife loves that about me. And so what was a very large aha moment for me was to stop doing that, was to silence my mind and allow somebody just to talk. And all my responsibility was to listen. And the workshop itself will tell you one of the greatest gifts that you can give other people is just listening. And that's it. It seems very basic, but that's it. So we go through the process of learning how to reflectively listen. It's the process of giving people attending behavior to show them that you're fully present. We're not looking at our phones. We're not, drifting off and thinking about the other things. Acknowledgments, assuring the others that we're tuned in. Gestures that you're listening. Things like and yes, I see what you're saying there. Door openers. So the door openers was a difficulty for me because I'm typically asking questions and wanting to get to the heart of what the problem is so that I can solve it. And the door openers exercise was really just extending the conversation, saying, tell me more about that, allowing the other person to talk so that you could just let them get to their own solving of the problem. And silence. Again, that was my aha moment. In many ways, I took, meditation is one of these big buzz things right now. It's probably been around for, 6,000 to 7,000 years, but now it's become really a fad thing to meditate. For me, I looked at the listening process almost as an opportunity to meditate, to just shut my brain off and practice being completely present with the other person there. Now, one of the exercises was to use this on people in your family or people in your world. And during the workshop, I actually took both of my boys out to dinner. And we went to Emo's. That's where we always go because my wife hates it and I get to take them. So we went to Emo's and I practiced. I spent the entire evening putting my phone away, completely listening about what they had done that day, enjoying the conversation and just letting them talk. And there was moments where they were kind of second get, like, what are you doing? What are you listening to me for? And it was really sweet. It was a sweet moment between me and my boys, and I enjoyed just listening. And so you start getting this reaffirmation that these techniques really kind of work. And then it comes down to reflectively responding, not getting to the heart of solving somebody's problem for them, but just conveying to the other person that you understand what it is that they said. So, let's see, I think I understand. The one thing I wanted to bring up was this one quote that Bob Chapman has, and it really is at the heart of his philosophy and why he thinks listening is so important. He said, leadership is not about telling people what to do. It's about listening to your people and letting them know that you hear them and that you care. It doesn't mean solving their problem for them. It's all about learning their language, helping them express their concerns, and working with them to help solve their own problems. So for me, it was a gift to learn that I don't have to solve anybody's problems anymore. What I can do is I can just be there for them, and I can be there as a sounding board to let them solve their own problem. So it was a very good workshop. I recommend it to everybody. We're actually hosting all of the workshops this year at Medici. So if anybody is interested in getting involved with the workshops, I would be glad to tell you more. Thank you.
Summer before last, I happened to read that book, and I believe it's one of those top 5 books that you want to read for business. I also participated in our community listens last spring, and Brian didn't mention it. I'm assuming they're still free for the community listens?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you take and I also went through a paid program that they put on that our nonprofit helped me pay for. They had a nonprofit rate for me that was for the corporate side. That's like $3,000. We had a nonprofit rate. It wasn't $3,000 for us. But this, our community listens, is the same quality as what they're charging corporate America. And for anyone that really cares about relationships, I consider that 3 days, it was a real gift.
It was, yeah. And again, to speak to that, Bob and Mary Chapman have set up their foundation to pay for this for people. And so they are really going out to the community and saying, who are the leaders in their communities, first responders, other folks that can make an impact, and who can we offer this to share this philosophy with? And so for me, and I think for Karen and for others that have been a part of it, you become a raving fan for what it is that they're doing. And I mean, they're giving it away for free. So you give them 3 days of your time, but it's incredible.
I'm going to try and say this without getting too emotional, but probably, I can't even remember how many years ago, but when my daughter was a teenager, I mean, we were in a pitched battle over a particular issue that was really hurting our relationship. And somebody just said, you know what, just listen. And that one time, I went to her and I just said, you know what, I just really want to hear and understand where you're coming from. And I didn't say one damn word, except to clarify some things. You know, I didn't challenge anything, I didn't push back, even though I was saying in my head, are you freaking crazy? And I just listened to the whole thing. And finally, I mean, it got to the point where I was just waiting for her to stop on her own, where it just went completely silent, and I still didn't say anything. And she finally said, I really thank you, Dad, for listening to me.
Yeah. It's powerful stuff.
Any other questions for Brian?
All right. Thank you, guys.